back to another episode of Beny and Kenzie talk about real estate. I'm Kenzie Karlstrom.
Beny Rabishin.
Let's get into it. We got a couple questions from some people. Here we go. So, this is a good one. My sister bought a house recently, and she had an absolute nightmare experience. Her lender was impossible to get a hold of, and her realtor felt like he was representing the seller.
Hopefully that lender wasn't me.
Hopefully it wasn't you. Hopefully it wasn't me.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. So, I mean, gosh, how do you avoid this in the future? Well,
I mean, there's not much context behind that, but I mean, I will say that's like one of the most common things that you hear.
Yeah.
Is that, well, let's just put it all into perspective, right? Buying the most expensive asset of your life is scary, it's daunting, it's exciting, right?
Mm-hmm.
All of those emotions.
all of the same, yeah.
And going into it not prepared, right? That's probably a start to that.
It's probably her first home. I don't know
how all that started. I think where many go wrong is it's real fun and sexy to find the house on Zillow and go to open houses, but not having a plan in place. So I would say to that, and again, not knowing what context behind that is, putting a good team around you, getting a plan and a strategy in place that's custom to your situation, really understanding the process. And then imagine going in and having all that done, finding the home that you really love, and you already know that you're good to go. The search is more targeted, it's more enjoyable because there's no surprises coming.
Yes.
Right? So it's putting in all that due diligence and work up front to make sure that you have a custom plan set up for you.
Yeah, and I find that there's just so much information out there that it seems like, oh, I can handle this. I watched that 7 TikToks with the realtor telling me how to buy a house, and I talked to the lender. Okay, how did they end up with a bad situation? I mean, who knows where they started their search? I always like to say, if you know someone, great. If your cousin's a realtor, maybe do some research behind if they actually sell real estate or if they just have the license. And then from there, ask whether you start working with a lender, ask them who they suggest as a realtor, and vice versa. If you start working with a realtor, ask who they like as a lender, because we've already vetted. We've already worked with these people multiple transactions. This is only one transaction that they're going to do. Sure. So ask your professional friends, who do you like to work with? Right. Was it a good experience? I think that goes so far.
I'll get, you've had this too, right? They'll come to you kind of halfway through this process of buying a house and going, I need a new real estate agent, I need a new lender. And what are the typical reasons around that? Obviously communication, not feeling like they have your back, right? Yeah. And that's the big component is you're going into something with the complete unknown of not understanding what this process is going to look like, right? And having someone and going, Kenzie explained all of these next steps that are coming this way. Then he showed me what's going to happen when we make an offer, what that's going to look like, what all the next steps are going to be, is putting a team around you together that that can hold your hand through the process. There's something to having a referral, like you said, or being referred to someone that has helped someone through that process. I would recommend is probably one of the best things, opposed to going online, right? Googling the best lender or real estate agent in town and not vetting them out.
I was going to say the biggest thing is upfront interviews. If you can interview, do the upfront work. Even if it's just 2 different realtors, 2 different lenders, interview them because it's so valuable down the road. If you have that first initial consultation with the lender or the realtor and you're like, I just walked out of there feeling no smarter than I walked in. Maybe, maybe that's not the perfect fit. If they explain things in a way that's isn't your learning style, that's okay. Go to a different realtor, go to a different lender and interview them. I always say that to sellers and I always say it to buyers too, but I think sellers are a little bit more knowledgeable because they've already done this once. They're like, yeah, I'm going to interview and I have a big asset to sell. The buyers are their first time, so they don't realize how valuable the upfront interviewing part can be.
Let's be honest, it's a vibe.
Yeah, it is.
You gotta have a good vibe.
Yes, sometimes it comes down to that. Yeah, totally. So interview, that's my takeaway.
Yep. Take your time, do the due diligence.
I'm sorry your sister had a terrible nightmare experience. Which leads us into this question. So I want to buy a house and my best friend just got her real estate license. My cousin has his and 2 of my friends are lenders. How do I pick? This is classic. This industry has a lot of realtors, a lot of lenders. Seems like every other neighbor is a realtor in this town. So how do you pick? I mean, again, it comes down to like we were just saying, interviewing.
Yeah,
Huge.
That's a tough one.
But family, what do you tell them?
Well, I guess you should help them with the proper questions to ask, right? I think, from a lending perspective, where many go wrong is, and not that they go wrong, it's just the unknown and not doing this before, is everyone kind of chases interest rate, right? Our parents have trained us, get the best interest rate.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, there's so much more involved when you buy a house, right? We talk about all the complexities and a strategy and all that type of, that's why, nothing against an online lender, but to have someone that is experienced that can really explain the process to you is so massive in all of that.
Totally agree. I think another side of it though, it can come down to like your cousin is a realtor, your best friend is a realtor. Those questions, it comes down to why. What's your goal at the end of the day? Are you trying to own this home? Are you trying to flip homes? Are you trying to get rich quick? Are you trying to build long-term generational wealth? Like, why are you buying a house? And I think it really comes down to interview your cousin and say, hey, this is a business transaction. This isn't just like, hey, I just buying some new pants. Can you help me? This is the largest investment of your life. So
it can cause some family
feuds.
Yes,
yeah,
100%
sure can.
If you're not using your cousin as your real estate agent. But in the end, is this the biggest investment of your life worth it to use someone that maybe isn't experienced enough to guide you through that? Right, it's something to think about.
Yeah, no, I agree. I always say like a great question is honestly, how long have you been into it? And not just how long, but how frequently do you actually sell houses? How many sales have you made?
Sure.
If you're new, do you have a team around you?
Sure.
If you've been in it for years, I mean, do you have some sort of help if something goes haywire? Because every deal has a very unique story. Every single house is unique. You never know what you'll run into. So, yeah.
Ask a ton of questions.
Ask as much as you can. Yep. Okay, let's see. Oh, I'm living in Colorado and have visited Bend a few times. We're wanting to move, but would you suggest we rent before we buy and shop in person, or can we buy a home after viewing it over FaceTime only?
Well,
very common problem. You go to Bend for a day and you want to move here.
yeah. I mean, during the pandemic, this was like the norm, right? Because homes were coming on the market. There were 20 offers on it in a day. You had no choice but to do a FaceTime call and walk them through and go, is this look good? You're like, I think it looks great. Let's put an offer in, and you go for it. So obviously things have changed a little bit. The need to do that is not there as much anymore. But it's possible. I mean, I think that can go either way depending on the situation.
Totally.
Right? I did a move like that. We rented first. I didn't know the areas. It's a very big investment to commit on something and think that I have kids, right? So schools were super important to us. So for us, we were able to move and get a short-term rental for about 6 months, which gave us enough time to figure out where our kids are going to go to school, what the areas are that we wanted to live, and then make a more direct decision on, all right, now we know the areas we want to live and the communities we want to live.
If I was representing a seller, I usually ask the buyer's agent when they showed it, was it a video tour or was it in person? Because it means a lot to my seller. If you get under contract and then during inspection they come to see the house for the first time, likelihood
like that.
Yeah, it's a bigger chance that they're going to terminate. So if I'm representing a seller, I'm always asking, like, did they see it in person? That's a big deal down the road, because in 10 days, when that inspection contingency is up, they have a possibility to just walk away. And now we've been off the market, on the market, off the market.
Yeah.
That can happen multiple times. And I would say that as a seller, I say, please see the house in person. If you're a buyer, I mean, I'd love to give you the best tour I possibly can, but there's only so much quality in like a FaceTime tour. Yeah. The other thing is if someone was to move, if they buy before they move and their income changes, like, can you kind of talk about moving from afar? Well, now their income is going to be from a different community. Yeah. Does that affect their pre-approval?
Well, from a lending perspective, the questions I'll ask are, does your job allow you to work remote, right? So if you're moving to an area and you can work wherever and do your job, that's a different story. So from a lending perspective, we accept that. It's totally cool. You don't have to move here and show that you're living in another city. Right away you get a job. If you're changing jobs, that's where it can really come into play. Mm-hmm. So if you are working in the same industry and you're moving to another city to get a job in that same industry, as long as you have an offer letter and know that you have a job lined up when you move there, you don't have to be at that job for a certain amount of time. We can use that. In fact, as long as you start that job before you get the keys to your new house,
Yeah.
you can get a loan.
I had some
Yeah.
issues with this. So someone was moving from Florida, and they technically were remote, but we had to get a letter that proved that they were able to work remote, because otherwise you can't possibly, that's way too far away to commute.
Right.
So yeah, I think it's super important to just have, again, like your lender know that what your working situation is, because that will really affect your pre-approval.
It's continuity of employment, right?
Okay.
Knowing that you have a job set up, that you're not moving to another city and starting a whole new business, that would not be allowed.
Right.
Where you're getting loans.
Right. And that's important to know. I mean, I think some people are like, oh, I can just move and I have this income. Oh, well, wait, that income stops as soon as you move. So
Sure. So that would be a perfect circumstance to come get your feet wet, figure out the situation
Rent
where you're at,
first.
start your business, rent for a little while.
Yeah.
And then, work on getting your finances together, and you'll buy at some point.
Yeah. No, I think that's super important. All right. That's all she got here.
If you guys like what you're hearing, everything real estate, comment below. All of our information is below. Follow us for more information.